Okay. Welcome, everyone. Happy to have you all here via Zoom. I hope you all are safe and doing okay. Thank you so much to the League of Women Voters and the coalition to bring this together. I'm happy to be here as one of the representatives of the NAACP as the first vice president. My name is Maquiba Reese. I go by she, her, hers pronouns, and this is a time for us to get to know our candidates and what's going on as it relates to Monroe County. And so I get the privilege of saying why voting matters. And I just want to say voting matters because it matters, period. I want to just say that, okay? But no, honestly, voting matters because these are the individuals we get to elect. We need to hear from them, whether they like what we have to say or not. It's important for each representative to be here present so that we can hear what their policies are, what they have as it relates to support Black lives, as it relates to who's being, who's taking care of our trash pickups, broken street lights, all the things that are affecting us in everyday real life. These are the people that we want to be able to say, hey, these are our issues, take it or leave it, but this is what we're facing. So voting is very important and it matters. And the last thing I want to share is not only is it with the important for us to come to candidate forums, but it's also important for us to get involved in the community. And so one of the things that the NAACP has coming up are various focus groups. And I'll share this information with Ralph and she'll be able to disseminate this information post this forum. And we want you all to get involved with the NAACP beyond just the amazing opportunity to be here for, as it relates to voting in the candidate forums, to hear from the candidates, but to continue to build up our community. We would like participation as well. So super thankful that I was able to open up, and I'm super excited to hear what our candidates have to say. And like I said, voting matter, period. You can quote me on that. I'm sure a lot of people have said that before, but it matters. And so thank you so much. And I want to turn it over to our moderator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Makiba. I am Sonia Learcamp. I also go by Sunny. That is my nickname. And I am so happy to be here to welcome you to our virtual forum. Today, this is a forum for the candidates that are running to be Indiana's 9th district representative to the U.S. Congress. I have a little bit of background in politics myself. I was the elected prosecutor of Hamilton County for 16 years. And then after leaving that position, I went into semi-retirement and moved to Brown County in 2012. And I have continued to do some work as a special prosecutor, and I'm involved with some not-for-profit organizations. And one of my favorite things has been getting to know the ladies in the Brown County League of Women Voters and learning things about candidates who wish to represent us. I am the co-vice president of the Brown County League. So I do want to remind everyone that other than the candidates and myself, if you could make sure to mute your sound, and please also turn your video off so that we can focus on the candidates. We would appreciate that very much. So the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We do not support or oppose political parties or candidates. We provide voters with candidate information through the newspaper, the online voter guide, Vote 411, and candidate forums like this one to help people get to know candidates' positions on issues. In this forum, it is important for us to make sure to let you know that all candidates for District 9 were invited to participate. We thank Matt Fife and Tanya Mills for participating. For a little review of the process that we will use, each candidate will be asked to give a 1-minute opening statement Then that will be followed by a series of questions. We will conclude our round of questioning with each candidate giving a 1-minute closing statement. The order of the questions will alternate, so neither candidate will always answer first. Candidates will have 60 to 90 seconds to answer each question. The time limit will be stated when each question is asked. Please, as a candidate, please monitor the clock visible in gallery view. When there are 10 seconds remaining, please finish your sentence and conclude. When time is expired, a candidate may be interrupted and asked to conclude. We will begin now with opening statements alphabetically. Matt, if you could please begin. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum. I agree that voting is so important, and I agree that hearing from your candidates is also very important. With that, I also want to thank you, Tanya, for being here. I think it's important to, again, express views so voters know what they're doing at the polls. My name is Matt Fife. I'm running for the United States House of Representatives. I'm the Democratic nominee. I am a teacher by trade, a high school teacher. I have 3 small children, ages 8, 5, and 1. And I come from a union household, and I'm a union leader myself nowadays. Those 3 kind of stories about myself lead into issues that I definitely care about. Education policy and protecting our public education in our schools is so important to me. Raising healthy families, I know the challenges of navigating working while raising a healthy family, and I know we can make better policies that way. And finally, making sure we have a good economy and we're protecting workers' rights as they go into their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Tanya, would you please give us your opening statement of 1 minute?
Okay, I'm Tanya Millis, candidate for U.S. House of Representatives, Indiana's 9th District, which has 17 counties in the Southeast Quadrant. I'm a real estate broker, so I work with people from all different walks of life. I'm a libertarian and a constitutionalist. I have to say that our founding fathers absolutely did not want a 2-party monopoly, which some people don't like to hear, but that's the truth. And the 2-party monopoly is what we call the duopoly. Washington, D.C. in particular is a mess. And it's very polarized. And my campaign is called the Roll It Back campaign, to roll back some of the pesky rules and regulations that have been bestowed upon us. So you can check out the things that I care about at my website, tanyaforcongress.com. And thank you.
Thank you both very much. Now we're going to move into the question. And the first question will go to Tanya Millis. And you will have 60 seconds to answer this question. What do you see as the government's leadership role in addressing reduction of carbon emissions? Please give 2 or 3 examples of appropriate efforts.
Okay, well, first of all, as human beings, we are the stewards of our planet. So it's very important that we have clean water, clean air, just to have a functioning society, a good quality of life. I think it's very important that we protect our wildlife and nature preserves. The United States, I think, has come a long way over many years with carbon emissions reduction, especially when it comes to manufacturing plants, automobile carbon emissions. We've reduced that drastically. We still have a ways to go. We need more participation with, keeping things cleaned up and that sort of thing. As an elected person in Washington, D.C., I would endorse pro-climate bills to promote positive change around the world, because even though the United States is doing well, China and India are horrible polluters, and the stuff that they're spewing into the atmosphere is spreading around the planet. So even though the United States might be doing okay, we've got to be better as examples to other countries.
Thank you. Matt, now I turn to you for this with the same question. Again, you have 60 seconds, excuse me, to answer. What do you see as the government's leadership role in addressing reduction of carbon emissions? Give 2 or 3 examples.
Yeah, thank you. We all need clean air, clean water, and clean soil. We need to live healthy lives. We need to be able to drink clean water, have baths. Our farmers need to be able to use clean soil and clean water when growing crops. And I think it's the government's role to help push us in that direction whenever possible. So whether that's updating our electricity grid to make sure that we can push for more renewables, whether that's pushing more research opportunities into renewable energy, I think both are very important. But that could also be things like planting trees, making sure that we have clean wastewater, clean runoff, making sure that droughts are taken care of, but also flooding. And so I think our government has a good role in all of this. And as a specific example, we have, as the government, we have pushed for cleaner cars, cleaner vehicles in the past. And these regulations have helped push car companies to not only have cleaner emissions, but also safer cars for all of us out on the roadways today.
Thank you very much, Matt. Now, our next question will go to you first. And again, for this question, you will have 60 seconds. What role does Congress have in leading economic development? Can you give examples?
Yeah, thank you. So I view economic development it is something that I hear about from voters pretty often. And they don't often use the words as economic development, but they say things like, I want my kids to grow up here and have a good job, right? I want them to be able to come back to the area and have a wonderful opportunity of life. I want them to be able to go off to college or the military or Peace Corps or whatever they're going to do, but come back home and have a really good job. And some of that has unfortunately been leaving rural areas. I hear that as well when I'm out and about in our large district here, that the rural areas are sometimes being left behind. And so I think the government plays a role in making sure that workers can stand up for their own economic development, can organize, that we are making sure that rural areas are having the telecommunications to be able to develop naturally, and to make sure that we are giving a good education to all, to foundation, to make sure that we are growing naturally.
Thank you. Tanya, now I will turn to you with the same question and 60 seconds to answer. What role does Congress have in leading economic development? Can you give examples?
Yes. Okay. First of all, we're having a problem with inflation right now. Our debt is over $30 trillion, and we need to bring that down so the value of the dollar will stay strong. We're not living within our means. Quite frankly, our country is broke. So that's one of the things that I would be pursuing as a member of Congress. The other thing is the promotion of small businesses at the state and local level. The Small Business Administration has at least one office in every single state in the union, sometimes more. And the SBA, their efforts help promote entrepreneurship as well as women. There's an office called the Women's Business Ownership, OWBO, OWBO, that helps promote women and also disadvantaged women to help be competitive in the marketplace. So as a member of Commerce, I would promote those efforts as well, because I think the grassroots efforts with the small business in your local community is where we need to be strong at and get better at.
Thank you, Tanya. Now, Tanya, I will be directing the next question to you first, and you will have 90 seconds to answer this question. This relates to elections. What measures do you support to improve and secure elections and voting access in our country?
Okay. As a constitutionalist, much of that goes back to the states. Article 4 and also the 10th Amendment, which reiterates Article 4 and their duties. We have the Electoral College, and at the state level, we have a Secretary of State candidate who has a really good idea where the voters would get a receipt. But I do think that early voting is important, as well as online registration. In today's modern technology, people should be able to go online at the BMV, because right now you can physically go into the license branch and register to vote. And but you can also go online and do that as well. And we need to get the word out to get more people involved in the voting process, as far as the counting of the ballots and making sure there's an audit and that sort of thing for integrity for the voting process. That's done at the state level. So as a federal person in Congress in Washington, D.C., I would not have direct oversight over that, because it's done at the state and local level. And the counties pay a big part of that as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Now I will turn to you for that question. What measures do you support to improve and secure elections and voting access in our country?
Thank you. I think we started today by saying voting is so important. Because it really is. And making sure that we have good access to our voting, making sure that everybody feels like they have a voice is so important as well. From the federal level, I think it would be great to see voting days be national holidays. I think some people have trouble getting off work to go to the polls at times, especially here in Indiana. Polls close at 6 often. Which is pretty early in the day. So I would love to see that be a national holiday. I would also love to see expanded voting access, early voting access, and making sure that people can easily register or automatically register to vote. So when I'm out and around the district, I often also talk to people who feel like their voice doesn't matter, even if they are voting. Unfortunately, I feel some people feel like they are gerrymandered here in Indiana, but also in other parts of the country as well. I would love to see independent commissions to draw lines so that representatives are not choosing who votes for them, but to make sure that the representatives don't have a say in who votes for them, that the people get to make sure that they choose who is voting. So those are some measures I'd like to see to make voting fair and safe and the access really well.
Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, now we'll turn to the next question. And this question will be answered first by Matt. What do you see as the major social and racial inequities facing people in our country? And what would you propose to address them? And on this question, you also have 90 seconds.
Thank you. That is a big one. Social and racial inequities. So there are many to choose from. I'm going to go with wealth inequality. I think it is one major thing that plays an unfortunate role in both racial and social aspects of our country. You see it in school policy, so where you go to school and how much your school has to teach the students, but also after school programs at schools and other programming happening in and around the schools. Wealth inequality helps that, and that is directly, so the Federal Department of Education and some policies put in by the federal government help make up some of that inequality, and that is something that I'm very passionate about and would like to see more of from the federal level, is to make sure that we are funding special education programs, less focused on standardized testing, but more focused on getting these great programs for all students. I would also like to see great access to good jobs, so making sure wages, benefits, and retirement are really good for all folks, and making sure that we have access to organize to make sure that inequality is less, so that the bosses and big corporations can't take advantage of workers as often. Again, there's a lot to this question, and I feel like I want more time, but Those are some important aspects to social and racial inequality. And yes, I think some of what I said impacts the social aspect of it more, but that also plays a role into the racial aspect. And I'm out of time, but thank you for the question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Tanya, I now would ask you the same question and also give you 90 seconds. What do you see as the major social and racial inequities facing people in our country, and what would you propose to address them?
Okay, I think the question of social inequities and the racial are two separate things, and they could be each discussed separately for long periods of time. So I'll try to address them both very quickly. Socially, the inequalities with social economics at the federal level has to do with Big Brother getting in y'all's business and the tax rate, which is enormous. My roll it back plan would be to eliminate the Internal Revenue Service. I know sometimes people give a big eye roll on that, but many politicians have talked about that for quite some time, and it's all been lip service. Right now, the state of Indiana has a 7% sales tax. If we didn't have the IRS and just increase the sales tax additional percentage, then the states can send money to the US Treasury to pay for our national defense, our roads, and the other things that need to be paid for, and for once and for all have a balanced budget. That way you as an individual would know in real time what you're paying in taxes. And people talk about the wealthy paying their fair share. Well, as a woman, if I bought a $40 purse or chose to buy a $400 purse, I'm going to pay more in taxes for the $400. So the wealthy are going to pay more in taxes because they spend more money. And I can go on about that, but I'm running out of time. So like Matt, didn't have enough time on that.
It's a big question.
Yeah.
So moving on to our next question, Tanya, you will be first to address this question, and you will have 60 seconds. What is the impact of authoritarian regimes around the world on our national security, and how should we address that?
Okay. Authoritarian regimes around the world affect individual rights in their country first and foremost. I do think we need to be leaders in that. We do have a U.S. Constitution which has been ignored so much in our own country, and our own freedoms and liberties have been willed away over many years and decades. So we're starting to see a problem here in our own country with somewhat, and I hate to say it, a little bit of a tyrannical government over in Washington, D.C. So we need to roll that back. But yes, there's some countries that are far, far worse than us with dictators that are brutal, actually brutal to their people. And we do need to be more outspoken about that and be better leaders on that. I'm not for getting into wars and going around and being the policeman of the world either. And I'm out of time. So.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Matt, you will have the same question and 60 seconds to answer. What is the impact of authoritarian regimes around the world on our national security, and how should we address this?
Yeah, so I think we see some pretty direct impacts. For example, with Russia and Vladimir Putin invading a sovereign border of Ukraine, right? And then we are directly impacting, we're helping out an ally in that regard, and helping stand against these foreign dictators. Some of it is less perceptible. So like in 2016, when Russia was impacting the election and spreading news and chaos whenever they can online. And we need to address both, right? We need to stand firm with allies. We need to make sure that we are addressing misinformation and protecting our secure ballots. But we also have to address what's happening in our country to make sure that we are not letting dictators or authoritarians take over in our country. I think that is maybe the most important part of this, is to look at other countries where it is happening and make sure that we are not letting this nationalism, this authoritarianism take over in our country as well.
Thank you, Matt. And Matt, you will be the first to answer the next question, which is, what are your priorities regarding access to guns and gun safety? How would you address the issues of school safety, suicide, and public safety? So there's quite a bit tied up in that, and you will have 90 seconds to try to respond.
Thank you. So I grew up here in Indiana. There were, next door we had hunters, we had guns in our household. They were safe, right? They were locked up. I never saw them as a child. I was never a hunter personally. I got more into basketball, but if that is somebody's passion, I can see how that is something that they care about deeply and a constitutional right of theirs. I also, as a teacher, I see a big worry, because my entire teaching career, we have focused on shooter drills, right? Active shooter drills. And I also know the statistics that there are over 100 gun related deaths a day. Many of those, like you said, due to suicide and violence. I think I'm happy that there was some movement, right, for keeping gun violence lower, while not restricting the rights of those who want to use firearms safely, responsible gun owners. What I would love to see, though, is more background checks. So right now in many places, you don't have to run a background check if it is a person-to-person sale, if it's not a licensed dealer. I would love to see more gun safety. So for example, making sure that we have safe storage laws, to make sure that we have red flag laws in every state and around the country. I would love to keep larger, so you think of these large automatic weapons, I would like to keep them as a little bit harder to get, especially for that 18 to 21-year-old range, where we're seeing so many of these active shooters go into schools or other public places with these large guns and large amounts of ammunition. And I think these are common sense tactics that we can take to, again, make sure that we're protecting our constitutional right, but also protecting those in our community, and doing both at the same time.
Thank you, Matt. Tanya, I will ask you the same question and also give you 90 seconds to answer. What are your priorities regarding access to guns and gun safety? How would you address the issues of school safety, suicide, and public safety?
Okay, thank you. What we have been seeing with mass shootings, the root of the problem, it appears to be mental illness most of the time. It's usually young males from troubled homes. They've been traumatized, or they have mental illness from other reasons. Sometimes it's physical, metabolic reasons. And we need to address that problem. The right for the people to bear arms shall not be infringed, period. So when it comes to the Constitution, and you have to go back to our founding fathers who fought so hard, and for the Declaration of Independence, people don't realize so many people died and bloodshed just to get free from the tyrannical king. And when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, and then 10 years later, the Constitution, it wasn't coming from a rabbit hunting trip. It was coming from freeing a nation. And so the right to bear arms has nothing to do with hunting at all. But I do think we should be safe with our guns. We should have background checks, and you need to have some common sense there. But mental illness really does need to be addressed, because some of these people, if they don't have access to a gun, they're doing some other nefarious activities to harm other people. So we do need to focus the light on more of the root problem of why these people are troubled and going around causing harm. School safety at the local level, I know the county sheriffs are working with local schools to help with that, and I would promote the encouragement at the state and local level to work with the school administrators.
Very good. Thank you, Tanya. Okay, Tanya, now you will be the first to answer the next question. And this is also kind of a long one, so you will have 90 seconds to answer. As a congressional representative, what will you do to bring the federal government, state government, and the private sector together in addressing the damage caused to our infrastructure, our agricultural sector, and our economy in general because of severe weather events and warming temperatures?
Okay, free market principles come into play when it comes to infrastructure and private groups working to make manufacturing companies and other businesses that are up to code, so that if a storm comes by, they don't just fall down. So we still need to have that, but also to FEMA. I think under the circumstances, FEMA has done a pretty good job with helping with, well, right now we've got a Hurricane Ian, or Ian, however you pronounce it, going on in Florida right now as we speak. So there's a lot of damage going on down there. FEMA is probably going to help out with that, with the cleanup efforts. We do have some federal funding for that, but nature is going to do what nature does, and we cannot stop it. We can do what we can to make our bridges stronger and our tall skyscrapers as built as well as we can, but there's only so much human beings can do against Mother Nature. So I think the federal government is somewhat limited on that. I hate to say that, but that's the truth. I'm going to be honest about it.
Thank you very much. And Matt, the same question for you with also 90 seconds to answer. As a congressional representative, what will you do to bring the federal government, state government, and the private sector together in addressing the damage caused to our infrastructure, our agricultural sector, and our economy in general because of severe weather events and warming temperatures?
I thank you for the question. I appreciate how some of these are entire semester classes, right, that we condense into about 90 seconds. But it's important to be able to do so. I think we need to modernize our grid to make sure that renewables can work. I think we need to push renewable energy sources, particularly at the local level. I personally have solar panels on my house, and maybe our entire house is electric, and maybe 2 months of the year we end up paying an electric bill. And we were incentivized, but those incentives have gone away. And I think more people would push for that if they had these incentives back in place, especially at the local level. We need to plant trees. I think we need to protect our forests and our parks that we already have. And especially at the federal level. I'd love to see some carbon pricing to push companies to research and come up with innovative ways to capture that carbon and use it in other ways, or to use less of it in the future, right? And that's market driven. So I think that's great. I think from the local level, we need to, I think the federal government recently has done a really good job. The Democrats at the federal level have done a really good job of making sure that we're pushing money towards the localities, towards the state level, to make sure that we can work on floodings and droughts that are happening that do impact our farmers, that do impact our wastewater at a local level. Down in Clark County, for example, they're using it for wastewater treatment plants, things like that. So making sure that some of that money is available for localities as well is really important.
Thank you, Matt. And Matt, you will be the first to get our next question, which you will have 60 seconds to respond. How will you work to increase job opportunities for your constituents? And what do you see as jobs of the future?
Yeah, great question. So as an educator myself, I first want to say that I think all kids should get a great education, that they should be flexible enough after high school to try out a few different things, they should be able to find their success during school. And I think that's a really important baseline for all students. From the federal level, to make sure we have great job opportunities, I think it's about pushing that next generation of jobs. So whether it be renewable energy sources, so we're pushing science jobs that way, whether it be good medical jobs and bringing good medical jobs into our area and our field, I think that's important. Whether it be good tech jobs, making sure that we're teaching tech and trade in our schools, and less standardized testing that don't help kids for the future. That way we have good tech opportunities. It can also be things like working at a local level to make sure we have entrepreneurship laboratories to make sure that we're setting up fiber optics and good internet access for all those entrepreneurs to make sure that they can open up good jobs and good businesses, especially in these rural areas.
Thank you. Tanya, you will have the same question and also have 60 seconds to answer. How will you work to increase job opportunities for your constituents? And what do you see as jobs of the future?
Okay, thank you for that question. One of the things that I would like to do, which is why my campaign is called the Roll It Back campaign, is to roll back some of the pesky rules and regulation that is stymieing small business. The trucking industry is hurt by so many of the rules and regulations that prevent truck drivers from doing their job. And so we have a truck driver shortage now. Small businesses, entrepreneurs have such a hard time just getting off the ground because of all the fees and the red tape, the paperwork. Some of it is redundant and unnecessary. You can go to the Small Business Administration here in the state of Indiana with all these forms and stuff that they have, but then you have it at the federal level too. I'm for the free market principles, and at the state level, the governors are the ones that are competing against other states to bring in factories and innovation to their states. So it's more done at the state level, and even some mayors and cities talk to companies in other countries to bring in microchip companies or whatever to their towns. So it's done more at the state and local level than it is at the federal level.
Thank you, Tanya. You will be the first person to answer our next question, and you will have 60 seconds. Does money play too great a role in determining the outcome of American elections today? If so, what would you do to address that issue?
Okay, the answer is yes. I'll just give you a personal example. I ran for office 2 years ago for this same seat. And my opponent at the time, Trey Hollingsworth, he's not running again this time, so it's an open seat. But he was one of the wealthiest people in Congress. I think he was rated out of 435, like 12th or 15th as the wealthiest. And he just spent so much money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, saturating the airwaves, TV ads, and this and that. Me and my Democrat opponent could not compete against that kind of money. So as someone in Congress, if I'm elected, I would try to do what I can to stop that. But when you've got big PAC companies and PAC money coming in, it's unfair. So I'm doing my best to do the groundwork, as I know I run into Matt sometimes at events as well, going out, shaking hands and talking to the voters the old-fashioned way. But it's unfair to the voters that they're voting for people that they really don't even know based on the advertising.
Thank you, Tanya. Matt, you'll have the same question and 60 seconds to answer. Does money play too great a role in determining the outcome of American elections today? If so, what would you do to address that issue?
It does, 100%. I am 100% for campaign finance reform. We need to see it, and we need to see it because we'll get better representatives in there in the first place. Personally, this campaign does not take big money from corporations. We also don't take large party money either. I think a lot of our politicians, once they get in DC, and this is some of the problem, not only blanketing the airwaves, not only having more money than an opponent, right? You have these districts that are strategic, and then you have these districts that are not strategic, and that hurts voters, that hurts their choices. But you also see it once these politicians get to DC. They don't always vote in a way that is best for the constituents. They seem to vote for their own self-interests or other big money interests or even party interests. And that's hurting constituencies. I would love to see some sort of spending limit on campaigns. I would love to see Citizens United overturned. And I would just add, my last sentence here is that our opponent, who is not here, received $1 million from one person in the primary. Now, from a super PAC. And that's how our elections work nowadays, right? Everything is above board and legal about that. But you have to ask yourself, should one person have that much influence over any election? And I think most people say no.
Thank you, Matt. Now turning to the next question, Matt, you will be the first one asked to respond, and you will have 60 seconds. What should the U.S. role be in addressing the factors that encourage people to come here to seek asylum?
Yeah, when I am out and about in the district, I would say immigration in general is one of the top 5 issues I hear about. And I hear about it from Democrats, Independents, Republicans, all across the board. And it's because we haven't had major immigration reform in many years, right? Maybe even my lifetime. We have a lot of folks who speak about making sure that we have job opportunities that aren't being taken right now. And part of that is because we have our immigration numbers are low. People want to come here and can't. We also have people like you are saying who want to come for asylum, who are in a dangerous situation in their own company, in their own country, and want to come here to start a better life, have a good family, have good job opportunities. And we need to make sure that we have that immigration reform so that people can come here legally, so they can live out the American dream here, raise their families, participate in their neighborhoods, and that needs to happen.
Thank you, Matt. Tanya, I will now turn to you with the same question, and you also will have 60 seconds to respond. What should the U.S. role be in addressing the factors that encourage people to come here to seek asylum?
Okay. I think our immigration policies need to be updated. The immigration services that we provide to people that come into our country are adequate, but we fail in many areas, especially on the southern border. As far as people seeking asylum, sometimes they come in through other means. We do have the application process where they need to be vetted and make sure that they really do need asylum protection in our country, but that should be granted. I think we should be fair and compassionate to people who need help from other countries. At the southern border, I personally think we need more ports of entry. Some of these people are coming across the border because it's so difficult to get in, and it should not be. The work visa programs, the green cards, and that sort of thing, we need to upgrade our system. We have so much modern technology right now that people should be able to come in a lot more easier and efficiently. It seems like we're living in the 1970s, the way they're doing it on the border. So there's some improvement that needs to be done, a lot of improvement actually. So yeah, I'm out of time.
Thank you, Tanya. And I will ask you to answer the next question first. You will have 60 seconds. What policy changes, if any, would you support to address needs for physical and mental health care?
Okay. As a member of Congress, I would support the all the advocates that work so hard to help with mental health care. And I was talking about that earlier when we were talking about gun safety, how there's such a problem with mental health. And that goes into many areas. We need to make sure that the states have what they need to address that issue, because it's really at the state and local level. You can't have somebody in Washington, D.C. dictate to different states and localities on how they should run their hospitals and their healthcare systems. As long as they are meeting the core standards and the core values on that, we need to let people in the communities help their neighbors, help their communities out. We definitely need to have the doctors, the psychologists, psychiatrists have more access to be able to get into the communities to where we can solve the problems. And as a congresswoman, I would want to work to be an advocate for those people who work in the mental health industry.
Thank you, Tanya. Matt, I would turn to you with the same question. You also have 60 minutes or 60 seconds to answer. What policy changes, if any, would you support to address needs for physical and mental health care?
So I've heard many times when traveling throughout the district that access to mental health care is difficult. That access may be because there isn't anything close by. There aren't openings in the offices available close by. Or it could be because it's just expensive, right? So somebody's insurance doesn't cover it. It's hard to get to because of children. There are many kind of on down the line issues. And I'll even go one step further. So I had a family member who got a job. This was within the past couple of years. And you often think, getting a job, that's wonderful. They had to move about an hour away, but that took them out of their coverage area. And they had to switch mental health providers, which, again, domino effect. They weren't able to find somebody. Their coverage slipped for a few months, and they ended up having suicidal episodes, to be frank about it. And that's not right. From the federal level, we need to make sure that our access to mental health is increased, our funding is increased, and this is also included in our access and funding to disabilities, those with disabilities, to make sure that they can stay in their homes and make sure that they get great care from individuals nearby.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. Now, Matt, I will turn to you to answer the next question first, and you will have 60 seconds. What do you consider a living wage, and how would you work to achieve this for your constituents?
That is a really good question. And it really depends where you live, right? So I think this push for 15 has been a thing for many years, but in some places, $15 an hour nowadays probably isn't even enough to have a living wage. So it really varies depending on where you are. I think the best way to push for this is a little bit of market influence by allowing people to organize and push for their own wages. From the federal level, yes, we need to increase the federal minimum wage. I think that needs to happen. I think $7 an hour or $7.25, whatever it is way too low. I think there are many reasons it's too low. You can see it's too low. But allowing people to organize, because right now big corporations in the National Labor Relations Act have a little bit of an advantage over workers. They're able to they're kind of pushing these anti-union policies without a lot of repercussions. So if we make that a little bit better for workers, I think they're able to push for their own wages and organize for their own. And that's a market solution that allows people in their own areas and in each area to really push for what they deserve, because they're the ones out there working. They deserve the wages, benefits, and a good retirement.
Thank you, Matt. And Tanya, I would turn to you with the same question. And again, you have 60 seconds to give your answer. What do you consider a living wage, and how would you work to achieve this?
Okay, a living wage is different than a minimum wage. So if you are a federal employee, the federal government can have set their standards for their own wages. If you are a private person working for a private company or a small business, it depends on where you live. The state of Indiana, the cost of living is not the same as the cost of living in Los Angeles, California, where the housing is 3 or 4 times as much and the cost, gas is high, everything's higher. So you would need to make more money. So the state minimum wage in California is going to be much, much higher than in Indiana. Also, if you go to North Dakota, it's the opposite. So you're going from state to state to state. So the living wage, what you would think of as a living wage, is going to vary depending on what area of the country you live in. The federal government can set the standard for what they want for their employees to what they think it'd be. It just depends on where you live.
Okay. Thank you, Tanya. And I will direct the next question to you again, and you will have 60 seconds to answer. What is the impact of programs that allow private entities to keep Medicare dollars not spent on Medicare?
I'm not sure what, could you repeat that again? I'm not sure I understand that question.
Right. This is based upon some programs that have been put into place by the federal government to administer Medicare. And the question is, what is the impact of programs that allow private entities that are administering Medicare to keep Medicare dollars that are not spent on Medicare?
Okay. Well, then if they're not spending it on Medicare, they need to return the money. If they're not, I mean, that's a simple answer. If they're not using the money for what they're supposed to be using it for, they shouldn't get it to begin with, and they should refund it. And there should be an auditing program to make sure that money that is issued for Medicare is spent and allocated the way it's supposed to be. So that's a simple answer.
Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that. And Matt, I turn to you with the same question. And you also have up to 60 seconds to answer. What is the impact of programs that allow private entities to keep Medicare dollars not spent on Medicare?
I agree with Tanya a little bit on this one. It does seem weird that private entities would be able to keep Medicare dollars that are supposed to be spent on individuals who need healthcare access. I'm going to use the question a little bit to continue to speak about healthcare access, because it is one of the main, probably the top 2 issues I hear about when I'm out and around voters. Our healthcare is, I think most people would agree that it's just not working very well here in America. And Medicare has worked well, right? So Medicare is one program that we see that works well over and over again. I'm glad that recently Democrats were able to pass a bill that allows Medicare to negotiate drug prices so that we can lower drug prices for more individuals around the nation, that we can start to cap insulin costs, things like that, to make sure that we are getting the good prices to everybody. But I would love to see Medicare expanded to more individuals. I would love to see healthcare access and spending actual spent on individuals. And this almost goes back to the money question we talked about earlier. You think about big pharmaceutical companies spending a lot of money on healthcare and on our election costs. And I think that makes an impact.
Matt, thank you for that. I am going to ask you to answer the next question first. And again, you'll have 60 seconds, and it ties in a little bit to part of the answer you already gave. What, if anything, will you do to control the cost of prescription drugs?
Ties in perfectly. I think Medicare should be able to negotiate all prescription drug prices. I think like I said, Democrats passed the bill. This is a major overhaul where there are 10 prescription drugs now that they can negotiate, and that's a good start. I think if anything, if you want to quibble about that bill, it's that it should be more, right? So I think that's one way to help prescription drug prices, is to allow Medicare, which is one of the biggest providers, insurance providers in our nation, to have more of a say in that. I also think Medicare should be expanded. I would love to see everybody have health care, right? To begin with, to have insurance, to be able to go get health care without going into debt. And I think by expanding Medicare, that's one way to do it. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. This might be the first one where I stop early. I think I'll stop there. Expanding Medicare's ability to negotiate on prescription drug prices is I think, great first step.
Thank you, Matt. Tanya, same question to you and 60 seconds to answer. What, if anything, will you do to control the cost of prescription drugs?
Okay, as a libertarian, I'm for the free market principles. I don't know why Medicare couldn't negotiate the prices to begin with and why they were stymied by the federal government to do so. We were just talking about how the federal government, is allowing them to negotiate the prices. Well, they should have been able to negotiate it all along anyway. The private industry, if you're not on Medicare and you have private insurance through your employer and you can get prescriptions at sometimes at a discount, the insurance industry should be able to negotiate as well. I hear where people in Canada pay far, far less for prescription drugs than they do here in the United States. Why is that? It's because we don't allow the negotiation, the free market to work the way it needs to work. So sometimes our government gets in the way instead of helping. And so I would like to, in that aspect, as a congresswoman, work to have the government get out of y'all's way when it comes to getting your medicine.
Thank you very much, Tanya. And now I'm going to ask you the last question of the forum, and you will each have 60 seconds to answer. But I think it's actually a core question for most of the individuals watching this forum. How will you stay informed about the priorities of all your constituents and keep them informed about important issues?
Okay. As a candidate, I'm going around to all the counties and talking to individuals as well as small businesses. A couple weeks ago, I spent some time participating in a small business forum down in New Albany called The Root, where we talked about entrepreneurship and small businesses and what we can do to help them with innovation and help them grow. Going around to all the counties, the small towns, Chamber of Commerce meetings, those are the things that I will continue to do as a representative. So as a representative and a voice for the people, I would want to do everything I can to keep in contact with the people and listen to them, and also not only inform them of what's going on in DC, but take their message, their voice back with me when I'm representing them in Washington, DC.
Thank you, Tanya. Matt, now the same question for you and 60 seconds to answer. How will you stay informed about the priorities of all of your constituents and keep them informed about important issues?
Yeah, thank you. I think as I'm out and around the district, that's one thing people really like about this campaign is that I'm a public servant first. I'm a teacher. I'm not a politician who's going out and doing this full time usually or by trade. And I'm doing it because I want to see a better future for my neighbors, for my kids, for my students. And that happens when we get more everyday people in DC. I think most people agree on that. People aren't beholden to big money, to special interests. And this campaign has pledged not to take money from those kind of special interests. As I move towards DC, I would like to continue to be in the districts, right? Continue to holding public forums in the 17 and a half counties. I would love to be in all of them a couple times a year. And hold special forums that people can come to and say what they need. I would also like to have a good social media presence and newsletter to make sure that people are informed about the bills that are coming up and about the way I'm voting on them.
Thank you, Matt. Now we're going to move on to your closing statements, and you will each be allotted 60 seconds for your closing statement. And Matt, we would ask you to go first in your closing statement.
Thank you. I again want to thank the League of Women Voters. I think this is a fantastic opportunity, not only for us to answer questions, but for voters to get information about their constituents. I think the work you do to make sure people are out and voting is fantastic. And so, again, I want to thank you. My name is Matt Fife. I would love your vote. As an everyday person, as a teacher, I would like to go to Congress to continue to work for my neighbors. There is often a lot of political discussion nowadays about how divided we are as a country, about how we aren't getting things done, but we can change that, and we can change that by being informed and voting. We can change that by sending representatives who aren't beholden to big money or special interests to DC. We can change that by making sure that our people we send to DC are wanting to be there for all of us. And I'm that type of candidate, and that's why I'd like your vote. You can find more out about my campaign at mattfife.com. And finally, I encourage you, whether it's for me or not, to get out there and vote, and to encourage all of your friends and family to do the same. Early voting starts about 2 weeks.
Thank you, Matt. Tanya, you now also have 60 seconds to give us your closing statement.
Thank you. The two-party system is broken. The people are fed up. That's what I'm hearing when I'm talking. We're so polarized. It's one end or the other, and we've got to stop that. Some people will, the phrase, you probably heard this, or the question, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, it used to be years ago that people would think that voting for a third party was a wasted vote. Well, now they're realizing that voting for the same politicians, the same duopoly over and over and over again, that's the wasted vote. So I am volunteering to be your voice, the voice for the people in Indiana's District 9, and so that you will be heard. And we need to bust up the two-party system and get libertarians in there, independents in there. So in November, when you vote, please keep an open mind, whether what party you're with. Be bold and vote gold. Tanya for Congress.
Matt and Tanya, thank you both for participating this evening. This is going to conclude our candidate forum for the 9th Congressional District of Indiana. On behalf of all the sponsors, I thank you so much for taking the time, the candidates, to be present, to let us see them thinking on their feet and answering our questions. On behalf of the sponsors, I want to make sure that everyone please read the list of sponsors, and we appreciate so much them making this possible. We also want to thank Katz for recording this and making it available for future viewing, not only by individuals on this forum, but by other citizens in this particular district. Please remember, as Makiba said at the beginning of this event, your vote is your voice. Be prepared to vote for the candidates that want to represent you. Register to vote or check your registration by October 11th. Even if you believe you are registered, you need to check to make sure that status is accurately reflected by the voting system. Plan how you will vote, whether it's early in person, absentee by mail, or in person on Election Day, November the 8th. Know the candidates, check out Vote 411 to learn candidate positions on important topics in their own words. Thank you again for being here this evening, and we wish you a great rest of the day and the week. Thank you.